Hey, how's it going today? I figured I would just show you my Metal Slug collection, one of my favorite series of all time. And yeah, I've got quite a few Metal Slugs on various platforms, so we'll take a closer look at each one of them, starting over here on the left. Here's one you might not see every day. It's Metal Slug 5 for the PC by Mega, the same company that developed Metal Slug 4. And yeah, they released 5 in Korea for the PC, and this version was only released in Korea, the PC version of Metal Slug 5. See the Hangul. Love the large box and the distinctive lime green coloration it has. Pretty nice one. Here are the 6 MVS arcade carts in Southtown Homebrew shock boxes. First we have Metal Slug, released in 1996. The masterpiece that started it all. Probably the definitive run-and-gun game. It's definitely my favorite one in the series, and I honestly don't think they ever managed to equal its excellence with any of the sequels. Yes, it's for me the best one. I feel like the gameplay is the most well-balanced, the lengths of the individual levels are just perfect, and the overall length of the game as well. I just tend to have the most fun playing it. It's very, it's challenging, but not overwhelmingly challenging as some of the later releases were. It can be more difficult if you're trying to complete it on a really low number of credits. I think the best run-through I ever had was just dying twice, so not even 1 credit. But I've played it probably way more than all of the other ones combined, just because it's my favorite one. Yeah, probably never a better run-and-gun game will be released. For me, Demon Front's right up there with it, but nothing else even comes close. And 2 years later, just a really awesome sequel, Metal Slug 2, was released in 1998, and I remember being really excited about this one since it followed my favorite one. So cool to get a sequel to it. And yeah, it introduced the ability to choose from 4 characters, the first one to do that. Unfortunately, it did suffer from a little bit of slowdown. It wasn't anything too overly major, but maybe one negative aspect to it. It's a pretty well-balanced game, too, in terms of its challenge and length of levels, and it was really awesome to have 6 more levels in a Metal Slug game, and new bosses, new characters, so yeah, it's one of my favorite ones. And then a year later in '99, Metal Slug X was released, and it's basically just a remixed version of 2. The really awesome thing about it was all the slowdown problems were eliminated completely from this one. There are some minor differences. For instance, Stage 1 in Metal Slug 2, the desert level, which takes place during the day. In this game, it takes place at night. The bosses, the levels which they appeared in Metal Slug 2 and Metal Slug X, they've all been kind of changed around. There are a couple of new enemies, such as the mummified dogs in Stage 2, and some of the enemies kind of occur at different positions in each level, and there are more of them as well, so the challenge is definitely a bit more steep than Metal Slug 2, which I felt was a little bit more difficult than Metal Slug. Here's Metal Slug 3, just an absolutely awesome one as well. I think a lot of people tend to consider this one to be the best one of all time. And yeah, if you hold that belief, I certainly wouldn't say that you're wrong at all. It really might be the best one for, well, there are several reasons. It's pretty immense, which is good and bad, I suppose, but the first 4 levels, there are just multiple paths that you can take. And I mean, I didn't even really discover all of these paths until, I don't know, several years after I had played it the first time. It is quite a bit more challenging than 1, 2, and X, I would say. Much more difficult to run through this one on like the 4 allotted AES credits. So I managed to beat, like I said, that one on less than 1 credit, and these in under 4. And for 3, it takes me a little bit more than 4, because it is quite a long game, and I definitely feel it's more difficult than 1, 2, and X, but wow, just a really epic adventure, more so than the first 3 for certain. And here's 4, the Korean release. This is the first one that was released by SNK Playmore. All, these four were SNK. And for me, this one is by far the most brutally challenging game in the Metal Slug series. I don't know exactly why that is, but yeah, it's pretty tough. Some of the bosses, like the boss in Stage 2, I just thought was like, I mean, he's more difficult than some of the bosses that occur later, and like Stage 5 and 6 can be pretty brutal as well. I would definitely have to say this is my least favorite game in the series, but I still think it's a very good game. I'm not going to complain about any of the Metal Slugs they made. I was quite happy with each one of them. But this one's, yeah, I would say, being the first Playmore title and it was Korean developed, it definitely did have a different feeling than the first four. Kind of different, but I don't want to complain about it too much. It's still an excellent game that any Metal Slug fan should own. And yeah, this one, well, 3 came out in 2000, and 2 years later in 2002, 4 came out. And, yeah, here's Metal Slug 5, one that I actually really enjoy a lot. This one was a 2004 release, I believe, also SNK Playmore. And much like 4, it has a much different feeling than the first, than 1, 2, X, and 3. But for this one, it didn't bother me as much. I actually really like the sort of rock soundtrack in it. Some really cool bosses. I love that giant airplane boss. Some memorable stages, like Stage 4, where you're underwater fighting those giant squid enemies. And I don't know, I have a lot of positive things to say about this one. The end boss was pretty wild as well. One negative aspect would be the sliding technique that they introduced. After you've been playing Metal Slug since '96 to 2004, I felt that was kind of odd that they introduced that. It's sort of similar to the slide technique in Sunset Riders, another run and gun, a really good one. But I think that angered a lot of die-hard Metal Slug fans. I mean, myself personally, I wasn't too pleased with it, but overall, I really enjoyed this game a lot. I think, out of the 6 on the MVS, 1 and 3 would have to be my favorite. And then, like I said, 4 is my least favorite. But I think I actually enjoy 5 more than 2 and X, but, just my personal opinion, I guess. And here are some of the ports to various CD consoles. First, here's Metal Slug on the PlayStation. I really love the Obi strip of Marco on this one, that's awesome. But, as far as the game itself, it's probably the weakest port of Metal Slug to another console for certain. It's severely downgraded if you're going to compare it to the MVS, AES, and CD versions, which are all, they're pretty much the same game. They did a really good job with Metal Slug on the Neo CD. But yeah, this one, the sound is really muffled. A ton of the animations are removed. It's not as bright and colorful. I guess one really cool thing about it was the combat school, which does add a lot to the replay value. And, here's Metal Slug X on the PlayStation. There's the Obi strip for it too. And they did a better job with this port. I felt like the colors, the graphics were a bit better. Still, running on the PlayStation hardware, it was a little bit limited. Definitely nowhere near as good as Metal Slug on the MVS, but this one's not a terrible port, honestly. It's okay. And here's a really fantastic port. Metal Slug for the Sega Saturn. Got the Obi strip in there as well. And this one's nearly arcade perfect. A few things I have noticed is that it does suffer from a little bit of sound compression. Some of the sound effects and voices of the characters are quite a bit more muffled than they were in the original versions, which are much clearer sounding. And there are some if you're going to nitpick, there are a couple of slight character sprite animations that were removed in this one, but you'd have to really look at it really in depth to notice. So if you don't have MVS or an AES or a Neo CD, definitely this is the best port of a Metal Slug game to another console. Metal Slug on the Saturn. Love having that one. Here's another awesome game. Well, we already talked about it, but Metal Slug 2, this is the Neo CD version. The Obi strip in it as well. See the camel slug there. It's my favorite vehicle in Metal Slug 2, really awesome one. And this one's great, you know. It's pretty much, I think, well, like with Metal Slug 1 on the Neo CD, it was exactly as the AES and MVS versions were, minus the load times. This one, of course, does have some load times as well, but there might have been a few sort of animations and the sprites cut out in this one too. Certainly less than there were in this one. I mean, this is a really good version of Metal Slug. It's gotten quite pricey these days too, a little bit harder to come by than it used to be. An awesome one to have. And here are some for the PS2. Just Metal Slug 4 and 5. You know, not a bad little collection of two cool games. You know, being that they're kind of like emulated versions on the PS2, I did notice some slight control delay in these, but it's nothing too major. But yeah, nothing much about this one, just 4 and 5. Here's Metal Slug Anthology, and it's a cool one. If you're not really into playing the Metal Slug games like in their perfect formats on the MVS, AES, or CD, and you have a PS2 or a Wii, you know, this is a very good option, very good cost-effective option as well. It's got all of them, 1 through 6. And the main reason I own this one is because I don't have a Sammy Atomiswave arcade motherboard, and Metal Slug 6 was released on that hardware. And I should talk about that game for a minute. I mean, wow, that game is amazing, and I know some people liked it, some people didn't. I love the music. It's got some really cool scaling effects, being that the Atomiswave hardware is a little bit more powerful than the MVS hardware. And yeah, some of the bosses in that one are insane, just insanely cool looking enemies. You know, one of my complaints with 4 is that it's sort of like all the enemies in it are kind of like rehashed from 1 and 3. There's not a lot new. 5, they did add some new cool enemies in the stages. And with 6, they just totally did that. They took it to a whole nother level. There's a ton of new enemies, so it's something definitely fresh and different. And yeah, I don't have an Atomiswave motherboard yet, but I do plan on getting one and getting an original copy of Metal Slug 6 for it, because I really love 6. You know, it's not one of these, you know, not on the MVS, but other than 1 and 3, I think 6 I like even more than 5, X, and 2 for sure. It's an awesome game. And here is Metal Slug Second Mission on the Geo Pocket. System I no longer own anymore, but I still have this game. Kind of a cool little piece of the collection. And you know, it's nothing spectacular. It's a handheld, so. But if you're you know, if you're not really a Metal Slug diehard, there's probably no reason to check it out at all, unless you've got a Geo Pocket and, you know, you really like Metal Slug. You know, I thought it was a cool game, but yeah, it is what it is, just a handheld version of it. And lastly, look at two kind of like the gems in my AES collection. I bought these many years ago when I lived in Japan, and I got these pretty much at retail price. And gosh, if you were to try to get Metal Slug 3 and 4 on the AES today, you're going to end up paying at least 2 to 3 times what they originally retailed for, and they originally retailed at $1.99. So yeah, I got these at a little store near where I used to live, near Roppongi Hills, and they're in great condition, and just love having these for the AES. Definitely Metal Slug 3 for the AES is the most valuable game I have. It's not as though they are pretty rare. There are rare AES games out there, but it's just that there are so many diehard Metal Slug collectors, and people who do have these aren't willing to part with them for a very low price at all. So you will have to cough up a pretty penny to get these. But yeah, just awesome to have 2 of them on the AES. I'll never be able to afford like 1, 2, and X on the AES. Those are just astronomically expensive, you know. Like I said, I bought these each for around 200, but it's not uncommon for them now to go for 500, especially this one, 500 and up. You probably find this one for around 400 now. It's still insanely pricey. But if you were to find, you know, AES versions of like these MVS carts, 1, 2, and X, you know, good God, you're gonna end up paying like thousands of dollars. You'll probably pay $2,000 for one on the AES alone, at least $1,000 for 2 and X as well. So don't think I'm ever going to buy those. Don't need to be spending that much money on like individual games, but yeah, pretty awesome to have these, and pretty awesome to get both of these titles, these rare titles, for you know, under $430 back in the day. $430 combined. But yeah, just another brief look at my Metal Slug collection. I'll probably put up a video after this one of like all the Metal Slug games I can have running at one time in my game room with these 10 TVs and, you know, arcade machines in here. It'd be kind of cool to see, I think. But anyway, yeah, one of my favorite series of all time. Everybody knows it and loves it, and if you haven't really checked it out, then you really need to, because it's just pure gaming awesomeness for certain. But yeah, I really appreciate you watching, and I will definitely talk to you later. So have a good one.